Hey, it's that time of year. Let's talk shed hunting with my new buddy Ron. There exists a threat, from anti-hunting groups to politicians trying to give our land away, and we won't stand for it. Those vast western landscapes provide the space for our wildlife to thrive, and a place for hunters and anglers to fuel the fire that sparks their soul. In this show, we share our love of hunting, fishing, and conservation. Here, we provide the foundation to meet these threats through passion and the grit of the American outdoorsman. Welcome to the Western Huntsman Podcast. Welcome to episode number 61, guys. This is Jim Huntsman, your host, coming at you from the Broken Tine Studio right here in Hayden, Idaho. You know it. And I am super happy to be coming at you this week. It's been a great week, been a fun week. We're into March as of the time of this recording. Now, the interview section, I recorded this a few weeks ago, and I'll explain that in just a minute. Before we get to that, though, I need to just let's talk about the question from last week that we had on the show was, what is the sound decibel rating of an elk bugle for last week's trivia? So we got tons of responses on this one, and I know some people were guessing. I know some people were guessing. Some dude wrote in and he's like, it's got to be 200 decibels. No, man, I think that would like shatter the earth if it was that loud. The correct answer is between 80 and 90 decibels is the sound rating for an elk bugle, a bull elk bugle. 80 to 90 decibels. So that's like equivalent to things like a blender and a car horn and things like that. So what was super interesting is, like I said, there was a lot of people throwing guesses my way, and a lot of people said like 105 decibels. And in your defense, if I hadn't looked that up and did all the research on that, that's about what I would have guessed. But I think that what makes them seem louder than what they really are is like they're really high pitch, and so the sound waves are especially if it's like a clear day or a clear evening or something, the sound waves are just going to travel a long ways. And it goes to show like where my wife and I live out here in Hayden, Idaho, kind of out in the woods here. Not very far away from us, a couple miles, is Highway 95, which is kind of like the main thoroughfare here up in North Idaho. And you got Highway 95 rolling. It's not a couple miles. It's like a mile. It's probably a mile or so from my driveway. But anyway, on a super clear night, if you're sitting out back, you can hear it. It sounds like it's not very far away, right? I mean, it's kind of annoying. But if it's cloudy and it's snowing or even just like that thick barometric pressure. What am I, a meteorologist? I don't know how to explain that, but yeah, especially if it's cloudy, dead quiet, can't hear the highway at all. So it's weird, and I think that relates to when you're out in the elk woods, and we're talking about like decibel levels and things like that coming from a bull elk. They can sometimes sound a lot closer than they really are, and sometimes they sound further away than they really are. So just something to be aware of. I think it's pretty interesting information. So with that, guys, on this week's episode, I got a really cool dude. A couple weeks back, I had Alex Wagner down in southern Idaho on the show, and Alex and I, we talked all things bow hunting and all sorts of different topics we kind of brushed up against there, but he told me that I should talk to a guy named Ron Hulse, and Ron owns a company called Bone-A-Fide Antler, and he's like this, he's got a long history of collecting shed antlers, and he's turned it into a business where they take the antlers and they cut them down, and he could sell them as dog treats or everything else he does with the antlers that we talk about in the episode. I don't want to give it all away right now, but it's interesting. So we talk a lot about shed hunting and the ethics behind shed hunting, and how people can maybe become a little bit better at shed hunting because it's that time of year. And I know people are getting antsy to get out in the woods and get some sheds under their belt, which is great. but we do need to think about the ethics side of it. And there's one thing that I said that I'm a little bit concerned about. I'm going to try to head off getting a bunch of nasty emails prior to us getting to that point. So we were talking about, time frames and when it is appropriate to go out and shed hunt. And that kind of leads us into, when the deer start dropping, when the elk start dropping, all those kind of things that everybody's always, kind of asking about. It's always a conversation topic on social media and stuff. But we talk about the ethics side of it, and when it's too early, even though you might notice that the deer have dropped, it does not mean that you need to rush out there and start chasing these sheds. And the reason is these ungulate populations, this is their most critical time. This is their most vulnerable time of year in terms of how much energy reserve they have, how much the feed they have available to them, the resources that they need to survive the winter. This is a tough time of year. And so I say, if you're out shed hunting right now, you are wrong, kind of thing. And that's what I say in that section. I know I'm going to catch flack for that. However, you got to keep in mind that there are geographical differences as to what I'm talking about. So, if you're doing that on a critical mule deer winter range, that's what I mean. You're wrong. That mid-February is when we recorded that. It is too early. You're creating a serious problem for those deer by going into their winter range and bumping them and making them burn energy that they don't need to be burning at this critical, vulnerable time of their life. And that's kind of what I'm talking about. Now, what I was talking about with geographical differences, if you're in Arizona, that's going to be a different story. If you're in, North Idaho and we're talking about whitetails, that could even be a different story, especially with the light winter we've had. So the point is don't get all bent out of shape and send me hate mail over it, because it's very specific to the areas that we're talking about, and you just need to use common sense with it. I'd love to go out and shed hunt. I am waiting a little bit longer. I still, personally, for me, it's a personal choice. I'm waiting a few more weeks before I go out. And I know that a lot of people are going to beat me to the punch and there's not going to be much left. And I get that. I'm totally fine with that. I'm more focused on upcoming turkey and bear season than I am shed hunting anyway. But if you are planning on going out, all I ask, and I think anybody should ask, is keep the animal's well-being in mind, because they can't afford to get bumped. For example, let's say you know where a herd of bull elk are hanging, right? There's maybe a bachelor group you've been watching or whatever. It's a very vulnerable time of year for them. So you bump them up into some drainage with a pack of wolves, one of them or two of them are going to be toast, and they don't have the energy to make it through to the spring breakup. And that's kind of the concept of what we're talking about with being responsible with it. So again, common sense is going to go a long way. Your geographic region is going to needs to be taken into account. Jeez, man, I'm having a hard time talking today. Geographic needs to be taken into account. Also, what feed is available. If it's a light winter, if it's a rough winter, if it's a really bad winter, that's going to change the time frame as to when you should responsibly go out and look for sheds. All those things. There's a lot of information online too, guys, that you can look that up and talk to biologists about it. I'm certainly not one, but this is just kind of coming from the mindset of, I know this wild game, they are definitely vulnerable this time of year, and I just want you to keep that in mind. That's all. So hopefully that helps. Instead of getting 100 nasty emails, maybe I only get 25. That's worth it, right? But again, getting back to the trivia question, guys, thanks to everybody that wrote in. That was awesome. We got lots of entries on that one. That's all getting rolled into, whether you got the answer right or wrong, it's all getting rolled into the drawing that is coming up next month. We're going to have some Phelps stuff to give away, and it's going to be a cool drawing. So I'm looking forward to that towards the end of the month. We're going to have, I think, one more or two more trivia questions before the drawing. So just and you guys can enter twice or three times, or every time there's a new trivia question, you can enter once per trivia question. You can't answer the same question 10 times to be in the drawing, but you can enter it every time there is a trivia question. So somebody asked about that. Hey, I answered the last one. Can I still be in the drawing if I answer this one? Yes, that actually, if you've answered 2 of the trivia questions, you've got 2 chances to draw for the Phelps gear and the Western Huntsman stuff that we're going to be giving away. So don't worry about that. Answer each one, and I'll have another one for you next week, hopefully. So we'll see how it goes. With those trivia questions, if you haven't answered them, you can write in at jim@thewesternhuntsman.com, and make sure you put trivia in the subject line so I can organize all those. We'll get the drawing going. It'll be a good time. Tell you what. And last but not least, guys, let's get into it here with Ron. Thanks a bunch for tuning in, and thanks a bunch for everybody the feedback that we got. I appreciate all the kind words I got over my debut rap song in the last episode with Jason and Dirk from Phelps Game Calls. Yes, to answer your questions, that was me rapping the Ice Ice Baby song with a little bit of help from my vocal soundboard here in the studio. And so I appreciate all the fun. I got some freaking funny responses on that coming through on the emails. So that was great. A lot of fun to read through. So I appreciate that. Guys, check us out on Instagram. Make sure you're following us there, and we're on Facebook. And I appreciate all the kind reviews you guys have written on like Apple Podcasts and stuff like that, and sharing it with your friends. Goes a long way for the show. Goes a long way for us. For the bottom of my heart, I appreciate that. You guys are the best. Enjoy this episode with Ron. He's a great dude. You guys are going to really like this conversation, especially if you're into shed hunting. And let's get into it right now. Here we go. Guys, on the line this week, I've got Ron Hulse. He is the owner, founder, all that, the big cheese of Bone-A-Fide Antler, and he's down in Buhl, Idaho, and I'm really excited about this conversation because we've never really had an episode centered around shed hunting and antlers and what he does with antlers, and this is going to be a really interesting conversation. So, Ron, I appreciate you coming on the show. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing great, Jim. I appreciate you inviting me. I've been looking forward to this.
So we kind of hooked up. I had Alex Wagner on the show a few weeks back, and he told me that you and I should talk.
I've known Alex since he was just a little tiny tyke. So I've seen Alex grow up. So yeah, I've been around Alex and his family his whole life.
So you're just hanging out with riffraff down there, huh? Is that what's going on?
Pretty much. It's a rough crowd down here, I tell you.
So, Ron, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from?
Well, I'm born and raised here in Buhl, Idaho, and we're the trout capital of the world here in Buhl. I don't know. That's kind of what puts us on the map. I'm trying to put us as the antler capital of the world, but got a little work to do on that. But no, born and raised here, and love my community, and have been blessed to be able to stay in this community. And it's a great place for recreation. Great place to have an antler business. Idaho in itself is a good place to do that. And I've been doing this full time for a little over 20 years. I've been picking sheds for 35 years, back when hardly anybody was doing it at the time. And it's turned a hobby into a business, which has grown to be a very large business. And they say, be careful what you wish for. And before, when it was more of a hobby, I got to spend a lot of time in the outdoors, and was very blessed to do so. And now I spend less time in the outdoors, which aggravates me a little bit. But as my business has grown and found success, that's responsibility, and responsibility can be kind of tough sometimes, I'm finding out. But it's a good life, sure. And I don't really have any complaints.
It's interesting that you say that, because I hear that a lot, and it's affected. I think that people that are not in the hunting industry see people that are kind of in some sort of variant of the hunting industry as like, you get to spend all this time outdoors and more time, hunting and fishing and shed hunting and all this stuff that we love to do. And, it's usually not like that, unless unless what I found out last night or 2 nights ago, maybe, unless you work for Phelps, most of your time is spent working on your business within the hunting industry, and it kind of cuts into a lot of your hunting time and outdoors time. I know it definitely affected me. Last elk season, I remember I missed a week for putting out an episode, for the show here, and I was super stressed out about it. So I drove all the way to the top of this mountain where I finally got phone service, and I recorded a quick episode on my phone. But that cut into my hunting time. So it just goes to show people that always want to get into the hunting industry, sometimes it really cuts into your hunting time.
It does, like any business. Yeah, like any business, Jim. If you're going to be successful, you really got to put your heart and soul into it. And once it turns into a business, it takes a little more time away from the things we'd like to do. But no complaints here. Sure. I got a lot of time in the field. I used to, I'd hunt big game probably 100 days out of the year and hunt sheds 50, 60 days out of the year. So I spent my share out in the outdoors and enjoyed every minute of it. So being tied up maybe with my business now a little more than I used to be, people aren't going to feel sorry for me. I've played a lot and I still try to play as much as I can, but it is limited now. So
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So I want to know like the story of your company is called Bone-A-Fide Antlers.
That's correct. Yeah.
And we've got, let me pull your website back up here. For anybody that wants to check it out, bonafideantlers.com. And obviously that's going to be in the show notes if you guys want to check it out. But 20 years ago or so, you're like going along and suddenly had this idea, hey, I'm going to start an antler business, or how did that come about?
Well, it probably started even before that. And, I spent being the trout industry here. I was in the trout industry for about 17 years and kind of on the corporate side of things. I saw, how, I don't know, it's a good way to go, but I always wanted to kind of do my own thing and be in business for myself. So in the years of hunting and shed hunting and fishing, I came in contact with a lot of great guys in the outdoors markets and stuff. And I finally decided that, hey, I'm going to take a stab at it. And I became kind of a professional vocational recreationalist, I like to say. And it was a lot of fun. In the beginning, it was a lot of fun. I worked for Muley Crazy Magazine as an advertising director for them and the Mule Deer Foundation publication. I started my own kind of clothing line product where we did all antler type of images and traveled shows and did all the trade shows all over the country and promoted Muley Crazy Magazine. And, big shout out to Ryan and Alicia Hatch. They're great friends of mine. And
oh, cool.
It just kind of transpired. But, no matter what I did, the antler thing just kind of pulled me back. And, antlers, they say there's such a thing as gold fever. Well, there's a thing as antler fever. I mean, I don't know what it is about antlers, but it drives people crazy, and it can be all obsessive. So I just kept coming back to antlers, and started buying antlers. I had a guy in the industry named Richard Dorchuk who was the antler man, and he confronted me one time and said, "Hey, Ron, you better give up the fish business and start getting into some other things." And I took you up on it, and I've never looked back. And so it's been a progression over time. But my core was the outdoors, hunting. Got into shed hunting, like I said, back in '85, and probably just spent way too much time out there, and my neighbors all thought I was crazy. I just, packing stuff home right and left. And
I'll bet you're like the only dude on the mountain looking for sheds back then.
There was very few.
Yeah.
And so I got hooked, and then antlers has just always called me back, and to the point where, I started buying more and more antler and developing some markets. And at one point in time, I found myself when, we came out of this bad economy in 2008 and the dog chew market kind of took hold. I found myself wholesaling about 30% of the U.S. dog chew market. And so I realized it was time to maybe start my own company. And I'd already started Bone-A-Fide at the time. And so I partnered with a few people and started a label called BuckeyBites, and that's kind of what got us going. And now it's grown into a big business. I do most of my business through Bone-A-Fide Antlers. We do a lot of private label for big companies, big retail outlets, and
oh wow, I didn't know that. Cool.
It's grown into a very big business, and we employ 5 people here, and I've got great people surrounding me, and I've got tremendous asset out there in the market. About a lot of people buying Antler everywhere. Antler's hitting the ground, and just work with great guys, and just we built just a big business, and we've kind of swallowed up a lot of the other players in the market. A lot of the people that I used to sell Antler 2 years ago, when I first found out they were worth something, now I purchase most of their antlers. So it's kind of gone full circle and brought us up to the point where we are today.
Cool. So you, I guess, because there's a lot of different ways and or I guess motivations for people to find the answers, and we'll go back to that in just a second. But
Sure.
For you, do you still get out and find your own sheds, or are you just basically buying other people's sheds?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I still enjoy to get out, and like I said, I've been very blessed, and back in the day, nobody was picking this stuff up. It was the chalk antler, Jim, I'm telling you, out there in some of these wintering areas was just endless, I thought. And it was so much fun, and I don't blame anybody for going out and hunting sheds these days, because it is fun. And no matter how many, I've probably picked up hundreds of thousands of antlers, and I still get excited to this day when you spot one on the hillside across from me, and
yeah.
It just never gets old. It's just magic all the time, and so I try to get out as much as I can. It's limited nowadays, and of course, with the competition we have out there in the field, it's gotten very popular. And like I said, I can't blame it. Blame people for getting involved, because it is a lot of fun. However, that's, creating some issues I'm sure we're going to talk about today. So.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I do want to talk about that, and some of the, just for people listening that may not know some of the obstacles that or I guess responsibility that comes with shed hunting, because there is something to talk about along those lines. But, it goes back to what I was saying. There's a lot of different motivations. Some people, they just, they get a little cabin fever, and they want to get out and going and finding, sheds is something to do. And it's great exercise. It's fun. I get excited when I find them. I don't go out specifically to find sheds that often, but sometimes I do. Usually I just find them when I'm, turkey or bear or elk, whatever, hunting or scouting, and I'll pick them up for sure. I'm not one of those guys that leaves them, but it's never been something I've gone out specifically, except for a few, 20 years ago when I was broke. I went and found a bunch of antlers, and I sold them to pay my electric bill, kind of thing. But
absolutely.
And some other motivations, some people, they're going out for the market for them. And then you have, I have a buddy named Troy Pottinger, who's been on the show a few times, who's a crazy whitetail hunter. And he goes out for the purpose of finding sheds to see, what's in his hunting area.
Absolutely.
And he's tracking deer that way. And he'll watch a buck for 5 years grow up and get mature, and then he'll smoke that thing, and that's how he does it, and so there's a lot of different motivations. So I want to talk about that and what we were kind of alluding to, like what's changed the most. Obviously there's more people now, but you started looking for sheds seriously back in mid 1980s. Tell us a little bit about how shed hunting and antlers and the market and all that kind of stuff has evolved since you first got into it.
Yeah, it's been interesting. Back, like you said, back in the day, nobody was really picking the stuff up. The ranchers didn't pick it up. The farmers didn't pick it up. The hunters didn't pick it up. The stuff was just laying everywhere. And that's back, when our deer numbers, we were coming out of the 50s and 60s. We were picking a lot of the chalk from that era, and there was just massive amounts of deer. And so, places that we were picking up sheds then are not even traditional winter ranges now. I mean, the winter ranges have come back with the populations to where, places where we picked a lot of that chalk up, you wouldn't find a deer shed there today. And it was kind of interesting to see how that transgressed. But it was crazy. Deer sheds primarily. What people don't realize, and especially people getting into shed antler hunting right now, is that our elk populations were not real healthy. And back in those days, I mean, we had elk, but we just didn't have near the numbers. And if you wanted to get a quality hunt, you need to pack into the wilderness and some of that central Idaho country. I mean, most of this country around here, it was primarily, all deer. And it really wasn't until the 90s that we saw, the elk population explode. And that was exciting to see. Unfortunately, maybe to the detriment of the mule deer populations who have just really never recovered. But,
yeah,
we picked up just gobs and gobs of chalk antler, and I just thought there would never be an end to it. And but slowly but surely, the recruitment numbers, the deer numbers go down, and people start picking it up. And this day and age, chalk is one of the least common items that we bring into the shop here. I mean, most of it gets picked up before it gets that old. And so it's been interesting to see, people starting to enjoy, the shed hunting aspect of things. I think what a lot of my buddies and guys from back in the day, they would say it's kind of the ruination of shed hunting because, the hordes that are out there now. And that probably developed a little more with social media. Social media kind of came in and people were exposed more to the shed hunting. Which is a good thing. Like you said before, I mean, it's a great thing for families. It's a great activity, and done responsibly. It's a great renewable resource, and I can't fault anybody for wanting to go out and pick up sheds. Now, do I like seeing people out there when I'm out there picking up sheds? No, I don't. I'm no different than anybody else. But these days, the place, the hills are crawling with it, and with people, and like I said, I can't blame them. It's too much fun. But with that pressure and how this has kind of evolved, we all need to be mindful that in the spring, when we have that cabin fever, like you talked before, and we want to get out, we got to understand that the resource out there are game animals. That's the most vulnerable time of the year, and so we need to take extra precaution not to harm the resource that we're trying to go out and enjoy. And that's certainly the challenge that we're going to face. It's the challenge that game departments throughout the West are facing right now, and they're starting to address it, which is probably good because, the last thing we want is the federal government to get involved. If we have the BLM or the Forest Service managing access to sheds, they may just shut it down. And so, we're entering a time when maybe we need to get a little more involved to kind of control the numbers that are out there participating in this. And I'm not a big fan of regulation, but, I think some education and certain forms of regulation may be necessary just to ensure that we're not harming the resource.
I would agree with that because that's, I think what happens a lot of the time, it's not necessarily that people don't know, or I'm sorry, don't care. It's that they don't know. They don't know that when they're going into, say some backcountry or a winter range where some mule deer, have been staying and trying to get through the winter. The feed is low. The source, their resources are at an all-time low. They're burning energy that they shouldn't be. And when you go and bump them out of their winter range, they're burning a lot of unnecessary energy at the most difficult time of the year. And so just knowing when to go, I think, is critical. And because, if you're like right now, it's mid-February. If you're out there looking for sheds right now, you're wrong. In my opinion, you're wrong.
Yes.
You're wrong to be doing that. Like you're too early.
I agree with you, Jim. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why, like you said, I hate regulations, and it's no secret on this show. I'm not a fan of the government, state, federal, or otherwise getting involved in anything. But you look at, just so the listeners kind of have an idea, like in Colorado, they have a shed hunting season, right?
That's correct.
Well, it's not so much a shed hunting season. It's a close to shed hunting from January 1st to April 30th. with some other areas that are, shut down beyond those restrictions. You just got to look it up in your area. Wyoming, same thing. January 1 to
Absolutely.
April 30, west of the
Yeah.
Continental Divide.
Nevada as well
Nevada, yep.
Yep.
Nevada, they all seem to be January 1 to April 30. Utah is interesting. They don't have it shut down, but if you're going to be shed hunting in Utah from February 1 to April 15, you have to have a certificate, like a tag, but it's
That's
free.
Correct. Yeah.
And they do have to take an ethics course every year. And then if you go like Idaho, Oregon, Washington, New Mexico, and Arizona, there's no real restriction. And so that's where we got to focus in terms of, and I did want to point out too, like people in these states that they do have restrictions, you should probably know the game wardens put little chips in antlers and they fill them up with epoxy and like a decoy deer, and they go and set these things out there. And if somebody picks it up, you're getting tracked by the game warden. You're going to get busted. So, just stuff. So people should know. And can you kind of expand on what we were just talking about? Like expand on why we need to be mindful and responsible when it comes to shed hunting, and then we can get into the fun part of talking about shed hunting.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. You're right. A lot of states have gone to seasons. I'm not a big fan of seasons. I understand the reasoning, like Utah, they haven't gone to a season, but they've gone to a permitted type basis, and it allows a little bit of education. I like that. There's a lot of new people that are being involved in the shed hunting side of it. And these aren't necessarily people that have really been involved in the outdoor side of things a lot. Like a lot of them aren't hunters. They haven't spent a lot of time in the outdoors. They've been introduced to this and they think it looks like fun and the weather's nice. And like you said, they got cabin fever. They want to get out. They've got some friends that do it or such. So, I think some of the problems that we're having out there, some of it is led to ignorance, just not knowing the vulnerability, not knowing,
exactly.
I talked to a few of the ranchers and stuff and they said, they have more problems in the spring with shed hunters as far as gates and trash and other issues than they do with the hunters in the fall. And I got to thinking about that. And I thought, well, you know what? A lot of these people that are maybe participating haven't spent time in the outdoors outside of that. A lot of them don't hunt. And, it's a great time to get out and enjoy the outdoors, but they might have not have been just really avid. And so some education, I think, would be great. One of the things with seasons that I'm not overtly like, and I've experienced it firsthand, is, it's kind of like gun control. It keeps the honest people honest, but the dishonest people, it gives them advantage. And exactly. You've got a lot of cheaters out there, and unfortunately, the states they're having a hard time, persuading judges that this is something to take serious. So when they build a case and a lot of times it's kind of a hand slap, and unfortunately we need a little more teeth in it. And I would like to see some four-wheeler confiscation or side-by-side confiscation, or even a vehicle or something like that for somebody that's out there doing those kind of things. And I think we got a long ways to go towards that, but it would certainly keep people honest. And and that just helps the resource, because the shed seasons don't keep people from being out in the field. It just keeps people from physically picking up sheds at that time.
Exactly.
It's very hard
difficult to enforce.
It is very hard to enforce. And, we kind of need to make a change in I don't know, the code of ethics. Back in the day in the 70s and 60s, the spotlighting and party hunting and stuff was kind of, good old boys thing. And it went on all the time. And we kind of changed. We turned a corner on that, and it became less accepted. And people, looked down on that and looked over and kind of monitored themselves. Well, in this day and age with the shed hunting, we kind of need that same community to kind of get out there and say, hey, maybe we need to kind of oversee ourselves a little bit and make sure that ethics comes into it over greed and ego. And, that's one thing that's definitely an issue. People say, well, if the antlers weren't worth anything, then people wouldn't go out and pick them up. Well, I don't believe that, because I was picking up antlers long before I knew that I could sell them. And I would pick up antlers
too.
if they were worthless today. Yeah, I'm just fascinated with them and love them.
I love having antlers. I think they're a great display item. I got a bunch. I've got sheds here in the studio that I've just picked up through the years and just keep them around. My wife loves them too. She decorates the house with them. And so I would agree, because there is that argument. You look at like the North American model, where we don't allow the any kind of market for wild game meat, right? And so
exactly.
And that's done great for that aspect of it. But antlers are a different story. We are rolling right into the spring seasons. I'm talking spring turkey, spring bear. We got to get geared up, and I'm here to help. Let's start with Phelps Game Calls. Phelps Game Calls is one of the OG sponsors of the Western Huntsman podcast, and we appreciate them for being there for us, and I want to be there for them. It's a great company story. It's an American story, the kind we can all get behind, and they make dynamite game calls. And I don't care if you're talking predator calls, waterfowl calls, turkey calls, elk calls. It's all there. It all works. It's a great company, and they've got a great discount for our listeners here at the Western Huntsman. That promo code is Huntsman10 for 10% off. Heck of a deal. Get your stuff. Get your stuff. Go to PhelpsGameCalls.com and get your turkey calls and your predator calls, because here we go. It's already March. I'm excited. Next on the list is Hoffman Boots, the most badass mountain boot you can get out there. I love Hoffman Boots. This company began in North Idaho years and years and years ago, and they have grown into one of the most recognizable name brands out there, and Hoffman Boots will not disappoint. What I really like about my Hoffman Explorers is they are on par with some of the most expensive hunting boots out there on the market, yet they're not as much money. That's a huge thing for when you're talking about all the gear you got to get for hunting season to save a few bucks on a product without skimping on the quality of it. That's Hoffman Boots. That's what you're going to get with them. Use promo code Huntsman10, all caps lock, for 10% off on your Hoffman Boots, and you won't regret it, I promise. Last but not least, let's talk about Scree Gear. Scree is high-performance hunting attire and gear, scientifically tested camo patterns, which, by the way, they have a new camo pattern coming out this spring that you're going to want to keep your eye on, because it's a pretty good camo pattern that they've been testing out all over the country, and it's been working really well. So Scree also is one of those companies with a great story. The name Scree comes from the scree rock found at the bottom of rock faces. The scree rock in that real rugged type kind of western country, and that's where Scree was developed, and they just changed the spelling on it and came up with Scree Gear, because like that rugged country, this is rugged gear. It's high performance hunting attire. Again, like Hoffman Boots, you're not going to break the bank and have to get a second mortgage on it. It's worth the money. Check it out. Go to ScreeGear.com, and don't forget to use the promo code The Western Huntsman for 15% off and free shipping. You can't beat it. And folks, I really appreciate you supporting our sponsors that support this show. It means a lot to me. Thank you so much. Let's get back at it.
It is a different story. And in this day and age, there's enough competition out there. And unless you're dealing with somebody that has some private land that's locked up in that, it's really hard to go out and make money doing it. You can starve to death trying to pick up deer antler these days, because there's just not very many deer, and they're scattered out through a lot of miles. And you're doing it for the love of it and getting out.
It's crazy. What's so freaking crazy about it too, Ron, is like, when I'm hunting, I'm way back there. I feel like I'm the first person that's ever traversed that particular ridge. I know I'm not, but that's the feeling I get. But you would think that in those areas where I know there's elk, I know there's deer, I know there's moose, you'd think I'd be finding antlers all over the place, but I don't, because it's so popular now.
It is popular, and a lot of the country that you may be spending your time in then is more summer range, and
exactly. That's another
exactly, and you'll find that's why the core winter range, where you've got winter range that winters a lot of animals in close proximity, those are the areas we really need to protect. And,
Yeah.
so it's hard to do like road closures and stuff like that. And that's been discussed. But the problem with that is you still have your lion hunters out. You still have your chukar hunters, your grouse hunters. And, you've got people out there that you don't want to take from their opportunity and their access. But I do believe in certain areas on those core critical wintering ranges where road closures would be a huge improvement. And, it's probably something we need to look at. But, prior to this, I was talking about the greed and the ego side of things, Jim, unfortunately.
Social media, yeah.
Yeah, that kind of rears its ugly head. And there's a lot of people out there that, like we talked about before, they're doing the wrong thing and they may not really know they're doing the wrong thing. Well, there's also a segment of people out there that are doing the wrong thing and they darn well know they're doing the wrong thing. But it's all about, getting the most, the biggest, and that social media post and this and that, and so ego really drives a lot of this unethical stuff. I mean, if you've got guys out there picking up elk sheds in a Bell helicopter, trust me, they're not doing it for the money. It's an ego thing, and unfortunately, we're always going to deal with that. But we really need to, as a community, as sportsmen and as outdoorsmen, we really need to come together and look at our resource. And we need to look at the things that are going to help protect that. We're always going to have a few bad apples, but I think if people address this and we make a concerted effort to be mindful when we're out there, we can make a difference. Every individual can make a difference. And those guys that are very avid and are introducing this to others, they need to be mindful of that. And they need to take a leadership role and express good ethics when you're out there in the spring. And if you're out there shed hunting and making sure that, we're following the rules and following the laws and most importantly, protecting the resource.
Yeah, well said. No, that's perfect. And I mean, the bottom line is this, I understand social media is like, it has just created so many issues from hunting to fishing to, shed pick or blah, if I could speak right, shed hunting. Yeah. All of that is exasperated on social media. And, you got people out there that act like they just nailed a, 300-inch bull elk in September by finding a shed. And it's cool. I that's what I love about social media is I like people to share their experiences, but it's blown things out of proportion to feed people's egos in terms of, look, I found 100 sheds compared to everybody else, or I've shot the biggest buck. I shot the biggest bull, this and that. And it's turned into more of a competition than just sharing the outdoors as an experience. And it's really turned hunters against each other in a lot of ways too. And so the bottom line with shed hunting is I'm all for it. You're all for it. We all love to do it. It's a great thing. It's renewable. But for the love of God, don't go chasing mule deer who are already struggling at the end of February up into the mountains where there's no feed and they're burning all this energy. And that's all I'm saying is there really does need to be some common sense used with that. And so that's the biggest thing. And go ahead.
I couldn't agree with you more, Jim. I mean, common sense. I mean, that's something that, like I said, unfortunately, when a person experiences that antler fever, a lot of times we lose our common sense. We've done this, whether you're hunting big game or you're picking up sheds, there's something about it. Guys and gals and I get people that walk into my shop and here in Buhl and they've never been around antlers. They've never probably given a thought of antlers, but when they walk in, they're mesmerized and their jaws just drop and they're just absolutely fascinated. And, there's something about it. But then there's those of us out there that have the antler fever. I mean, we've got it bad and, we just can't allow that to cloud our judgment. And, I'm just asking a lot of people out there, especially the most avid ones, the ones that are on social media, the ones that do have a following. These are the guys we need to step forward and really, make it more about the ethics as much as the experience and getting out there and finding as many sheds as you can. I mean, we just really need to understand that this is a vulnerable resource. And back in the day when there was hardly anybody doing it, we didn't, it wasn't a problem. But now, everybody owns a side by side, everybody owns a four wheeler, everybody has all these great tools and fun toys, and yeah, we're itching to get out and use them, but and that's okay. But let's just be mindful when we're in those areas where that vulnerable wintering game, and in the spring, a lot of times the weather's nice and you're thinking, hey, these things are out of the woods. Well, they're really not. That's that's a time of transition of feed and vulnerability, and we just always need to be mindful of the resource first, or else, we're not going to have this opportunity, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I agree. And it just goes back to just like anything. I don't care if we're just talking about camping on national forest land. I don't care if we're talking about big game hunting. I don't care if we're talking about fishing, shed hunting. It doesn't matter. It's always that 10% of people that don't follow the rules and don't pay attention to the ethical side of it that ruins it for the 90% of us. And so it's just that way. So anyways, let's transition from that. I think hopefully, so, folks kind of learn something out of that. If they, again, I think a lot of it, like you had mentioned, is just kind of ignorance. And I don't mean that in a rude way. It's just maybe they don't realize, they're not hunters. They don't realize that a pregnant doe in February or early March is really struggling, and that's their most vulnerable time, and they have to get to that spring breakup so they can start feeding and dropping calves for elk and these fawns and everything else that goes into it. So hopefully maybe they got something out of that. And let's transition to talking about maybe like getting people that are listening to this, that they've been trying to, find sheds for the last few years, and maybe they're having a hard time, and you can give them some pointers as to like areas to look to find sheds or some direction to get into it. Don't drop any secrets or anything.
Well, yeah, don't worry about that. It's like a good fishing hole, I mean, guys are very secretive, and if you've got good areas and just like a good hunting spot, but for the most part, people, it changes from year to year as our spring weather, and it just depends. We're going into a spring this year. It was very mild throughout most of the Northwest, so our mule deer herds and our elk herds we're pretty scattered, and a lot of them are wintering. It's good. It's a good winter for them because they're spending more time in that transition period between summer range and winter range, and they're just scattered out over a lot of country. And so, you've got to take that into mind, and that's a good thing. We like that when game is not so congregated and not so stressed, and so on a year like this, you have to broaden your horizons a little bit, and you got to realize that that game is going to be pushed. It's going to be back in a lot further back up in some country, and they're going to be in traditional winter range areas, and they're going to be in some of that more summer range areas. And so when you go out to look later in the spring, that's something you need to be thoughtful of is where were those animals at that period of time when they were shedding those antlers. The deer shed relatively early, depending on your location. The further north you go, the quicker they come off. We get a lot of deer that start shedding in December. We get the bulk share of them here north is probably in January. This year was a real mild year. A lot of deer still carrying a lot of antler out there. As you go further south, that game will carry, those deer will carry clean into April and May in some places. I mean, it's crazy how that period of time of that shed season varies from place to place. Elk, a little bit different. Elk, we start getting that green up, and we start getting that in the southern end of the states, and in Utah, or in let's say New Mexico and Arizona, and they tend to start shedding a little bit earlier with that green up, and then as you move further north, it's we start experiencing that shedding period for the elk could be in March and April, and so people have to be thinking where was that game at that period of time? What was our weather like at that period of time? Did we have a heavy snow situation where, some of that game was further down the mountain, or was it a mild year and it was maybe further up? But elk tend to want to be moving from winter to summer range at the point of time when they're shedding. And so those transition areas are the areas that a person wants to spend their most time is where those elk had wintered and where they're going in the summer. That period in between, that's the $1 million question is those are the areas. Now, guys that have been at this for a lot of years, they've discovered these areas and they understand those areas and they have a little better success. If you're just new to it and you're getting out there and looking at, it takes a little trial and error. And, like I said, without giving up any secrets here, but it's just persistence and getting out. I recommend anybody that's wanting to get involved in shed hunting is get a good pair of boots. And a good pair of socks because you're going to put some miles on and a really good pair of optics and spend the time out there glassing and just enjoying the outdoors. I mean, a great day out shed hunting might not necessarily mean you pick up many sheds. There's so much other great beauty in the spring and stuff you don't see in the fall. And take it all in, enjoy it all. But if you happen to find an antler, hey, it's even that much better of a day. But, I think people persistence, getting out, spending some time out, looking for wintering sign and then following that wintering sign up into more of that transitional area. I think people are gonna find success if they put a little time forward. But don't get discouraged if you don't. Just like I said, enjoy the outdoors, enjoy the beauty of spring as it all comes into full focus.
Yeah. No, good stuff. And what are your thoughts on training your dog to help you find antlers? Right, that's like a new fad.
It is, and they do really good, and that's what so much fun. I mean, people that have dogs, and this is a great sport to train your dog in it. Now, I do believe it's a little difficult to have a dog that's good with birds or good with lions and also good with sheds. I mean, dogs tend to be a little bit more one-dimensional, and so if you want a good shed dog, you really need a good just a shed dog. You need to focus on that. I've got buddies that have great dogs. And they've got great eyes and they've been at this a long time, and their dogs will go out and find 3 antlers to their 1 every day when they go out. So the dogs are a real benefit. The other plus is most of these guys just thoroughly enjoy watching their dogs work. Like a bird hunter. If you go out and you hunt birds and you don't have a dog, it's not the full experience. And just seeing the dog work the birds and out there working and being with, your best friend out there is a great experience. The shed hunting side of it too is the same thing. As these dogs they're amazing. They've got a great sense of smell. A good shed dog will have a good sense of smell. It'll also have a good sense of sight. And it also needs to be a breed that can handle and cover a lot of rough terrain. And so when you're thinking about getting a shed dog in that, take those into consideration because those are the dogs that seem to thrive and do better out there in the field.
Yeah, that's you made a couple of really good points in there. My dog, my retriever, he's a great bird dog. Other than he's getting old now, but anyway, he's sitting right here. But poor old boy. Anyways, but I've been in the woods with him, and he has flat out walked right past antler sheds without even acknowledging them. Now he'll find birds. He's really good at finding porcupines, which is pretty irritating, but. He'll find birds like crazy, and he's great with that. But that's kind of what I was going to ask you, because I've heard that a lot. Folks that want to have a really good shed dog is probably not going to double as a great pheasant dog or waterfowl dog. They're kind of more master of one thing versus jacks of all trades. So that makes a lot of sense. Do you have like a recommendation on breed for a few different breeds or something that you've seen, from some of your clients that are bringing you antlers and stuff? What kind of dogs are doing best out there for performance wise, or is it just, or does it even matter?
I don't know that it matters that much. I think any dog is trainable. I think, the things you're looking at is good eyesight, a good sense of smell, and, a dog that wants a job. And, something that dogs that are driven, kind of predisposed to go out and find things. And, so retrievers, a lot of guys are using labs. The labs are great. They got a great nose. They're just, sometimes maybe not as athletic as you would like a dog out in that type of country. And so, you've got these sporting labs, and they seem to be really popular in the shed industry. I've got a number of buddies that have the sporting labs, and they're real agile. They seem to do really great. Any of your upland game bird dogs, I think, your Weimaraners, your Visas, I got a couple of buddies that have those and have trained them well. I've got guys that have trained their cattle dog to go out and maybe not push cows, but find sheds. And like any dog that needs a task, I think is a good dog for that type of deal. And, I just encourage anybody to go out and spend time with their dogs. So, whether you have success in training the dog to find antlers or you don't, you're going to have a good time getting the dog out regardless. But I think there's a really good, good opportunity to train a dog and go out and work. I mean, these guys, some guys tell me that they train them, for a treat or something. They're more when they find an antler, they give them a treat. I've had other guys that use an activity like throwing a ball. They've got dogs that are just nuts about chasing a ball, and so they'll actually carry a ball with them. They find an antler. They get the antler brought back. They take the ball out of their pocket. They play ball with the dog for 5 minutes, and that's its reward. And then they're back on the hunt again. And so I think anything can be trained. I think there's certain breeds that probably will have a little more success, but I think I would be mindful of a breed that is pretty durable. A lot of the country, when you're out there hunting sheds, they're, it's rocky, it's that winter range, it's brushy, it can be steep. And so a good durable dog, I think is going to be a good choice.
Hey, can you talk about for just a minute I want to get back to like Bone-A-Fide Antlers, your antler dog chews, health benefits to dogs on those?
Well, I think you broke up just a little bit on my end, Jim. What was that again?
I'm sorry. Getting back to your Bone-A-Fide Antlers and the dog chews and stuff like that. Why have those become so popular, or what are the health benefits of those kind of thing? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, that's a really good question, and the dog chew, I believe in the item. I think it's a fantastic item. I'm also a huge dog lover. The antlers are a great source of a lot of minerals and protein, and they're good. Non-allergenic, they don't have any odor, they're a longevity chew. They're a little more expensive than a lot of the chews you find out there, but like I said, they come with a lot of benefit. And then once people realize that this is a renewable resource, I think they even enjoy that a little bit more, and understanding, their dogs are enjoying something that is kind of cruelty free in a respect. But antlers, the antlers themselves. I mean, if you look at a bull elk, say he sheds in March. A mature bull, his antlers will be fully grown back by the end of July. I mean, that's amazing how fast these things grow. But the nutrients, inside of these things is amazing. It takes as much energy for a mature bull elk to grow a set of antlers as it does for a cow to produce a fetus and a calf. And these things are just packed with nutrients. And I also export to the Asian pharmaceutical market, and the Asians have been consuming antlers for thousands of years, and they've long known what we're finding out now. The same benefits that the dogs are getting out of the antlers today is the Asians also consume the antler for that. Aphrodisiac gets the most press, but really that's the least used use for antlers in the human pharmaceutical market over there. It's mostly just joint health, arthritis. It's a vessel expander, but it's good for healing and stuff like that. It's the same thing our pets do. Not only do they get a dental reward, with healthy gums and teeth, is they're ingesting that marrow, and it's a really good item. It's with a lot of minerals and a lot of goodness. So you're seeing people now, as you well know, Jim, you have a dog. We'll tell our kids no long before we'll tell our dog. I mean, we spoil them terrible. And, people are now starting to become more interested in what their dogs are consuming, and not only with their food, but with their treats as well. And so people are more health conscientious these days. I think as people have been introduced to the dog chew, they've had a really good response with their pets. They really like them. I always tell it, it's like doggy crack. It's like crack for dogs. I mean, they once they get a taste of that marrow, I mean, they love it.
It's dog nip.
So, luckily for me, people are willing to spoil their pets, and I believe it's a great item, and we're seeing more and more people enjoy the item. And, so the sales, consistently have been going up. And like I said, we're involved in a very major player with most of the big retail outlets. And so we do a really large volume. It's been interesting to see the market kind of increase, but it's a commodity like anything else. There's the supply and the demand can go up when the economy is good right now. Which is kind of surprising with everything going on, but people are still spending money, and so it's a good item. If the economy gets tighter, that's something that we've seen in the past where people spend a little less money in it's not like bread or milk or oil or gas. I mean, it's something you can do without, but
kind of a luxury item.
Exactly, but we are seeing people that really enjoy the item and get some great use. Their dogs just absolutely love it. They get a really good value out of it because it does last a long time. For the most part, every dog's a little bit different. Some dogs are like Cujo and they could chew a car tire in half in a day. But antlers are a good thing for them. We can upsize, we can custom size things. I mean, it will challenge the best of chewers. But I'm a big fan of it. Yeah.
It's not that expensive. I'm on your website here. You can get this assorted variety pack for, basically $17. Yeah. Looks like you got a sale going on. And then the Bucky chews, $6 for this little bag for a smaller, some of you guys out there that have those little chihuahuas. My dog would eat that, and it's like an aspirin to him. But extra large stick.
Yeah, that's
$13.49. I mean, that's not that bad,
yeah.
and they last longer. I sometimes I'll be at the grocery store, and at the grocery store up here they sell those giant, leg bones from the cows are butchered and whatnot, and they've got a little meat on them here and there. I'm spending $10 on that, and my dog will eat that in a few days.
Yeah.
It's funny. I'll get out there, and we have like this mail lady that she'll come deliver a package, has to drive up the driveway and come to the house and whatever. There's this giant bone on like my dog just killed a dinosaur out in the woods or something and brought it back. But no, I like that. I'm going to get a bag. I'm going to get this assorted variety pack here you got. I like that idea.
Well, and I always I like people to reach out to me directly. We've got a website out there. And like I said, most of the stuff we do is large volume, big retail market and stuff. And, a lot of times when you go to those type of stores, you don't really get a great selection for what your dog may really need. If you have a bigger dog or an aggressive chewer, you're probably not going to find that in the retail side of it because, they're kind of looking at a size that keeps them at a price point to where people, don't have a little sticker shock. I always recommend get people, if you've got a big dog or a big chewer, give us a call and we'll custom cut something that fits your dog, not anything else. And every temperament's a little bit different. We cut dog chews up to 2.5 pounds, big elk beam things for dogs. And I always like to see the dog get an item that is more fit to its personality and its size than just a generic chew. So, I'm always excited to educate people on the antler chews. We get a lot of people that just walk in. We do a wholesale right here out of the shop. And I spend a lot of time just, talking to them about how to size something appropriately for their dog because, we don't want a dog that is going to have go through the item too quickly, or have a bite pressure maybe that breaks a small antler and becomes a puncture problem. We want people to get a great item at a great value, and really, their dog gets some great enjoyment out of it. So, I encourage people to do a little research, and for those people that have small dogs, it's a bigger chew is always no problem. They have a Napoleon complex. They'll take a chew away from a big dog. Don't worry about your dog getting a too big a chew. But those people that have large dogs, it's important that they do a little research and get out there and find something that's going to be more fitting to their dog and their dog's temperament and size wise.
Okay. And it'd probably be a good training tool too, right? Like if you've got a pup that you want to trade to shed hunt, I would assume that if the dog likes to chew on those, he or she'd be more prone to find them when you're out there.
I imagine. I worry. I keep a lot of, my dogs, they get a lot of dog chews and stuff, but I also have a lot of big trophy stuff laying around. And so, sometimes I'm a little nervous that they're going to mistake the wrong piece for something. But, I don't know. I think most of the shed dogs, certainly could have antlers as antler chews, but I think, most of the training in that goes with, the reward in finding the antler, going out and hunting for the antler and finding the antler and providing the dog either a snack that they like or some kind of behavior, a stimulation. And I think that's probably the route to go with training a shed dog. But I certainly wouldn't be afraid to give them antler dog chews at the same time.
Gosh, man, I didn't even think about that. I bring home a monster buck you just shot and have it laid out, and the dog takes an antler and ruins it. Oh man, yeah, I'd be upset. But yeah, so go ahead.
Oh, well, the dogs have been consuming antlers for thousands of years, so there's no risk. I mean, there's a risk that if you bring home that big trophy and leave it on the floor of their garage, the neighbor's dogs are going to come in there and chew it up is a real risk. So be careful, because dogs naturally want to chew on antler, but I've heard those stories and they make my heart just sick for a few guys that have lost trophies to that. But, yeah.
I can feel that one. So I got an oddball question for you, just kind of random out of the blue. But when you see a lot, people take their elk antler, whether it's something they shot or they found, a dead head or whatever, and they hang them up outside. Is there like a treatment you could put on those to keep them from turning? So you can keep it outside for a long time.
Yeah, I really wouldn't recommend it. A lot of people back in the 70s and 80s and stuff, even the people that shot big deer back in the day, they felt like they needed to preserve the antler. And by doing so, the common theory was to put a coat of lacquer or something on it to preserve it.
Yeah.
Antler, if it's, and unfortunately I've purchased and I've seen some sets that, have just been ruined with this stuff. But if antler's kept indoors, it'll last forever. And it may heat crack, it may dry out a little bit, but it'll last forever. And, but antler,
I'm talking about the outside.
Yeah. Any antler that you take outside, if you hang it up where it's not exposed to the moisture from the ground, or if it's not having contact with the ground or something like that, it's going to last a long time. And it's going to age over time. It's going to patina out, which I kind of like. It's going to turn to chalk but we've got a big old bull elk that's been hanging on the side of a building here in Buhl at a welding shop for 30 years. It doesn't look any different than it did, when I remember it, 30 years ago. It's chalky, it's gray, but it's going to last the test of time. Now, if you have what we call yard art and stuff, where it's laying out and it's exposed to the ground and that moisture drying wet,
getting snowed on, all that kind of stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. It's going to deteriorate, and it's going to take a while, but it will eventually rot, turn pink, fall apart. So anything that you want to display outdoors, like over the entrance to a driveway or over a garage or something like that, if it's under an awning, I wouldn't put anything on it. Even if you put some stain or some lacquer or anything on it, it's going to peel eventually anyway. I would just leave it as as is, let it naturally turn white. It will probably last in a hung situation like that for many, many, many years. Yeah.
Okay. So transitioning from that, and I'm sorry, I'm like giving you a lightning round of questions here, but shed hunter goes out, fills, gets a bunch of antlers, all excited, brings them over to you. Give people an idea of what they could expect for, price wise on those antlers. So there's not any like fantasies out there.
Well, absolutely. And that's where my business has grown, just really large over the years is just good business practices. I would say back in the day, there was, back when I started selling sheds, I just couldn't find an honest guy in the antler market. It was like, I call them horn carnies. There was a lot of them out there and I got took by them all. And
I like that term. I'm going to steal that.
Yeah, exactly. But this day and age, it's very straightforward. There's really no craft grade. There's not much of a craft market. We did nearly 500,000 pounds of antler last year. I'd say 0.5% of that goes into a craft market. But the consumption side of it kind of drives the market. And so we grade antlers depending on the quality of the antler as it comes in. Each species has a little different price point. Let's take elk as an example. So if you go out and find an elk antler in the spring and it's fresh and it's brown and that's a premium antler, that's going to bring a premium price. So you bring that in, that's called an A grade elk. Back in the day when it had a broken point or a broken beam or something like that, it used to get docked because it wasn't craft quality. These days, It doesn't matter. Broken, as long as it doesn't have a lot of surface chews on it right away, we do have, especially up north where you guys are at, that antler doesn't lay too long. Something's found it and starting chewing on it because the stuff's delicious, I guess. But if it's a good brown antler found from that spring, it's going to fetch that A grade price. The price kind of depends on the area. Right now, the street prices are between $14, $15 a pound for that grade of antler. Then we go into the next grade of antler, and that's an antler that's laid maybe through the summer into the fall. It's turned white. They lose their color really quickly. The larger the antler, interestingly enough, the faster it breaks down. It's got more exposure to the weather and the elements. It gets more sun. It gets more heat. A bigger antler will crack out quicker than a smaller antler. So a lot of that larger elk antler, through that first year, that full first year, whether it's found in the fall or found in the spring the next year, that's what we call a hard white. And that's an antler that's going to probably run in that $8 to $10 a pound range, depending on your location and where you're at. And then what we get after that is we get an antler on a large antler. Normally when they're about 2 years old, they start to crack out on one side. And that's what we call a C grade antler, where the cracking and checking has started to take place and the antler's starting to break down. It may be fully brown on the backside, on the downside, where it's up against the ground, but the exposure to the sun and the weather and the moisture on the upside has started to deteriorate that antler, and it starts to go into a C grade antler. Now, an antler, a smaller antler that sheds the weather, and let's say it's been in the canopy of a tree or something like that, it may fare better and it may stay in that hard white situation for 2 to 3 years. So that's kind of the next grade down is that antler. Now the antler that's laid out there for 2, 3, 5, 10 years, that's a C grade antler. Up in your country, up north, Idaho, you have a lot of moisture, a lot of snow. Antlers tend to break down a little bit faster up in that country. When you get down into my country, down here in southern Idaho, and a lot of these more arid portions of these northwest states, you'll find that antler lasts a lot longer. It doesn't break down as fast. So geographically, it depends on where you're at, on how your antler will grade, how long. Yeah.
Yeah, that speaks to, because I lived in Utah, and that I would find a lot of what you're talking about, that C grade type kind of antler. Yeah. I don't find any of those up here, and I think that we have between the climate and the critters, I just don't think they last. Where in Utah, man, it was nothing to go out and hunting jackrabbits in the sagebrush. You'd find these huge antler sheds that look like they were probably 5 to 10 years old. They'd be
exactly,
sitting out there, and so yeah, interesting. Much drier.
Much drier, and antler will last a long time. In that country, shed antlers will last. They can last 20 plus years laying out there before they crumble apart. In your country, not as hospitable for antler, and critters, squirrels, porcupines, everything likes to chew on antler, and you get a lot more chews up in that north country. You get a lot more water damage. Water damage is one thing that is really a bummer, because the water actually gets inside the antler, kind of kills the core from the inside out. And and so that's something that your antler up north will degrade a little bit faster than, say, antler down south. Pinning on those areas that you find it in, but anything you find fresh in the spring is going to be a good A-grade antler. I mean, you can take that antler home, you can put it in your shed, your shop, your barn. I mean, it could sit there for 30, 40 years. It's still going to be an A-grade antler. As long as it's inside, indoors, exactly. But if you find a big pile of sheds and you like laying them out around the yard and stuff like that, just know that they are going to degrade. They are going to go down in quality over time. But it's a great look. The other thing is unfortunately, in this day and age, a lot of people know that the antlers have value. So if you live in a populated area and you leave your antlers laying out in your yard or whatever, don't be surprised if one day you get up and you go out and they're missing. Unfortunately, that happens all too often.
That does happen,
and,
man. Anyway.
Yeah, unfortunately, I hate a thief as much as anything, but I just tell people that, hey, you're kind of inviting problems these days, and there's a seedy element out there that's looking for anything that has any value, and unfortunately, antlers now are one of those things that some people don't realize they have some value, so they leave them out, and other people that do, they end up taking them, and it's always a sad story to hear somebody that you'll call and say, hey, my antlers got stolen, and I just, my heart goes out to them. So, if you have something and you enjoy it, make sure you put it in close. Yeah.
It's terrible if you're in a situation and let's say you just got your first elk, right? And somebody rips off that rack. I was talking to a dude, he gets his first elk with a bow. He'd gotten one, with a rifle before or whatever. But anyway, so this one's super sentimental. But for some reason, he packed the head out first and the rack out first. Left it kind of setting up in the bushes where his truck was parked because he wasn't totally stupid and put it in the back of his truck and then went back in for the meat. But somebody found it. Somebody found the rack and took it, and it wasn't like some monster bull, but I mean it was his first bull and it was a branch antler
absolutely
bull and some dickhead came up and ripped him off. It just, that kind of stuff that rubs me the wrong way, and so
it does me as well. My heart goes out to guys like that. I mean, they're priceless to us. The memories, just seeing that antlers, hanging up on the wall for all those years, you'll always remember that archery hunt. And so, that's that's a bummer. It happens. And, and people need to be aware of that. And make sure that, if you've got antlers that are easily accessible out in your yard or under your eave or something like that, unfortunately, in the day and age we're in now, you need to be mindful about that. And
booby trap them. That's what I say.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I've had a few guys that have had some success. We've definitely caught some antler thieves out there, and but
there's got to be a way, like. Everybody's putting the electronic or electricity hooked up to like the political signs when people, there's got to be a way to do that with the antlers, and then put a trail camera.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. Well, tell me, I encourage everybody to do that because nothing irks me more than a thief, but it's a legit deal these days, and but some people enjoy to have that antler art out there. But if you're picking it up and you want to maintain that value and put it indoors, put it in the garage, put it in the shed, put it somewhere where it's safe. And like I said, once you get that indoors, that antler will never devalue. It'll stay in the condition that you found it in. And if the guy decides to sell it at some point in time, then absolutely, it's still the same value.
Yeah. That's yeah. I think I've got a set that's 25 years old. And they look brand new. They look like they just dropped. But I did find those early spring. I think I was out coyote hunting or whatever. But they've just been inside. And for me, when I find sheds, I generally hold on to them. I don't sell them. But I don't go out and find piles and piles of them, right? And so
exactly.
Maybe one day I will.
There's a lot of people out there in the same boat, and they don't find a lot of antlers. But I encourage people, you find a big set, you find something nice that you like, keep it, hold on to it. You can call somebody like myself if your garage is all cluttered with all these antlers and the stuff that mismatches and the broken stuff or whatever. You'll be shocked at how much value you have there, and so you can sell that.
Yeah.
But I always encourage guys, to hold on to the stuff that really means, and that's what shed hunting is also about. It's not just about going out and seeing how many antlers you can find. Like your buddy, he uses it as scouting measure, and he goes out and he looks for certain sets and maybe trophy animals and stuff like that. And
he's just keeping tabs.
Like that, absolutely, you're keeping tabs. But if you find something like that, it's a treasured item, and I call it a keeper horn. Guys go out and you spend all year hunting sheds. Well, you're hoping to find a few keeper horns, and the keeper horns are, something that is of more trophy quality, or to you maybe some oddity or anything that floats your boat. By all means, keep that antler. But a lot of that antler, I get a lot of guys that go out and they pick up antler and they use those proceeds at the end of the year to maybe reinvest back into their hobby, buy some binoculars, upgrade a rifle scope, something like that. So it's kind of some fun money where you can take that and turn that back into something that you're going to use from year to year. And I see a lot of that out there, and so it's kind of fun.
Yeah, and that's all super dependent on the market, and things have changed a lot. Like I used to, like I told you, between bounties on coyotes and shed antlers and a few different things, I used to pay bills on doing that stuff back in the day. But
absolutely.
To your point, you were just talking about, like I'd mentioned Troy Pottinger, where he's just keeping tabs on these bucks. It's cool because once they get mature enough, he gets them. But he's got like the last 3 or 4 years of sheds for that same buck that he could show you.
Yeah.
And that's cool because this is public land mountain bucks. This isn't like some game ranch high fence kind of situation.
Exactly.
And it makes it even that much cooler. So anyway,
it does.
Ron, this is go ahead. I cut you. We've got kind of a delay here we're dealing with.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. No, that's a great thing to do. I mean, I'm always fascinated to see people that have multiple years off the same animal. And I love how antler growth is and signature points and that memory in antler. And it's fascinating. And so it's always neat in sheds when you can see multiple years of the same animal, see as it matures and maybe turns into this, exceptional animal. I've seen it also where, they hit periods of time in growth where they're tremendous and then they regress and go back down, and it's fun to see that. And that's one thing you get to see in shed hunting. When you pull the trigger and the animal drops, the story ends right there. And so I love the fact that we can go out and we can find multiple years of sheds off these animals, and sometimes these animals they get so smart they're never harvested, and their only thing they've left behind is those sheds, and that excites me. I in this day and age, I enjoy getting out and looking for something shed hunting and that experience as much as I do in the time in the fall. And it's just a great opportunity to really get out and enjoy what the outdoors offers and enjoy what our resources is that are given to us. And I encourage people to get out and enjoy it, but do it responsibly and follow the rules and regulations that are probably going to keep coming, unfortunately. But as more and more people and as our populations increase here in the West, there's going to be more and more demand. And so we're going to have to be mindful of that at all times.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, with increased population comes increased regulations. It's just a sad fact of life, and this is just how it is. But, well, Ron, this has been a fun conversation, man. I appreciate you doing this with me.
Absolutely. I appreciate the invite. And maybe down the road we can have another conversation like this.
We should. And I'm going to come see you next time I'm coming through the Buhl area. I'm going to swing in and see you. I want to see your shop. I think that
absolutely. I would invite any of your listeners, if you get into the Buhl area, you come by. I mean, it's a destination point. And, we may be busy. We're doing things. My doors are always open. You'll come in here. It's quite a homage to Antlers. So if you love Antlers, stop by and check us out because it's something to see. It really is. But I encourage that. I am. And it would be tickled to meet any of your listeners out there and invite them to come on by and say, hey.
Yeah, that'd be great. And like you said, yeah, you guys, if you're down in the Buhl area, it's a fun little, probably a Saturday outing or what, I don't know if you're open on Saturday, but go check it out. Go check out Bone-A-Fide Antlers.
I'm pretty much here 7 days a week for the most part. If I'm not on the road, I'm probably here, or if I'm not lucky enough to be shed hunting myself or hunting, but I spend a lot of time here. So, reach out with a text and chances are you'll catch me.
Good deal. Well, I'll come see you for sure. So again, thanks again for coming on the show. Let's keep in touch and maybe do this again and talk more antler. I'd love to talk a little bit more about your business. We didn't spend a ton of time on that, and so we're definitely going to have to do that again. But for now, thanks a bunch. And guys, the website is bonafideantlers.com, and I will have that in the show notes. Is there any other website you want me to throw in there, Ron?
Not really. Like I said, I encourage people if you're looking for dog chews, reach out to us, via email. We've got my email is bonafideantlers@yahoo.com. I always encourage I like some interaction with the customer when we're dealing with somebody directly, so I can really make sure that they're getting what they need for their dog's needs. And like I said, I'm a huge dog lover, and I want to make sure that we've got a great item here. I just want to make sure that people get what they need.
Cool. Well, thanks again, buddy.
You bet. Thanks, Jim. It's been very enjoyable, and we'll keep in touch and see each other soon, I'm sure.
Awesome. You made it all the way to the end. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. We sure appreciate your support. This is Jim Huntsman signing off and reminding you to check us out at Instagram at The Western Huntsman and on Facebook at The Western Huntsman. And you can also check out the website at thewesternhuntsman.com. Thanks again. We'll see you guys next time. Stay Western, and I'll see you on the mountain.